Here's something your psychology teacher never told you. Every single villain you have ever loved in anime, the ones that kept you up at night, the ones you low-key agreed with, the ones that made you uncomfortable because part of you understood them, they weren't just evil, they were broken. And not in some vague, lazy storytelling way. I mean, actually clinically diagnosably broken in ways that real psychologists have names for, in ways that real people walking around right now are also experiencing. Today we are going inside the minds of 5 of the most iconic anime villains ever written. And we are not just going to say, oh, he had a sad childhood. We are going to actually diagnose them with real disorders, real psychological terms, real explanations for why they turned out exactly the way they did. And I'll warn you right now, by the end of this video, you might not hate them as much as you used to. You might actually feel something worse than hate. You might feel like you understand them. Let's go. Before we get into the villains, we need to establish one thing clearly, because that is the trap a lot of people fall into. They hear, this character has antisocial personality disorder, and they immediately think, oh, so all people with that disorder are evil? No, absolutely not. That is not what this is. What we are doing today is looking at these characters through the lens of real psychology, to understand why they think the way they think, why they make the choices they make, and what happened to them that nobody ever bothered to fix. Because here's the uncomfortable truth about every villain on this list. None of them were born evil. Every single one of them was failed by people, by systems, by the world around them, at a point in their life where they were still salvageable. 5 villains, 5 disorders. Let's start. Griffith. If you have seen Berserk, you already felt your stomach drop just reading that name. On the surface, Griffith is everything. He is beautiful, charismatic, brilliant, the kind of person that makes everyone around him feel like they would die for him. And they did. Many of them literally did. But here is what is really going on underneath all of that. Narcissistic personality disorder, NPD, is not just about being arrogant or vain. That is the shallow version. The real thing is far darker. People with NEBD have a grandiose sense of their own importance that is actually a defense mechanism, a wall built to protect an inner self that feels completely worthless. Griffith genuinely believes he is destined for greatness, not in a confident, healthy way. In a way where nothing and nobody else truly matters unless they serve that destiny. Notice how he treats every single person around him. Guts, Casca, the entire band of the Hawk, they are not people to Griffith, they are instruments, tools he uses to build his dream. The moment someone stops being useful or worse, the moment someone threatens his sense of control, the mask slips. Remember when Guts left the band of the Hawk? What did Griffith do? He spiraled. He went to Princess Charlotte not out of love, out of pure emotional destabilization. A psychologist would call that a narcissistic collapse when the external validation that holds a false self together suddenly disappears. Now, layer psychopathy on top of that. Psychopaths are not people who feel nothing that is a myth. They feel things intensely. What they cannot do is feel genuine empathy. They cannot step into another person's experience and truly register it as real. The eclipse. That scene. Griffith sacrificed an entire army of people who trusted him with their lives, people who called him their dream, and he did it with perfect calm. No hesitation, no grief, just calculation. That is not evil in the cartoon sense. That is the real-world presentation of a psychopathic mind operating at full capacity. And the most terrifying part? He was always this way. We just did not want to see it, because he was so beautiful, so compelling, so convincing. That is exactly how NPD works in real life. You do not see it coming until it is already too late. If Griffith is the villain who destroys people while building something, Johan Liebert is the villain who destroys people for no reason at all. And that is exactly what makes him the most frightening character in the history of anime. Antisocial personality disorder (ASPD) is frequently confused with being antisocial in the social sense. Shy, introverted, avoiding people. That is not it. ASPD is characterized by a persistent pattern of disregard and violation of the rights of others. Lying, manipulation, complete absence of remorse. The person sees rules, social norms, and other human beings as fundamentally irrelevant to their personal reality. Johan has ASPD in its most extreme form, but what separates him from every other villain on this list is the second layer, what we could call nihilistic psychosis. Most villains want something: world domination, revenge, recognition, survival. Johan wants the opposite. He wants to be the last person alive and then die. He wants to stand at the end of the world. His destruction is not a means to an end. The destruction is the end. Now think about this scene. He is reading to children. Soft voice, warm presence, gentle smile. And you are sitting there as a viewer completely frozen because you know what he is capable of, and yet in this moment he seems almost kind. That is ASPD's most dangerous feature. High-functioning Asti looks like charm. It looks like warmth. It looks like someone who deeply gets you. Johan never raises his voice. He never needs to threaten. He simply talks and people collapse around him like buildings in an earthquake. In the real world, the most dangerous people are not the ones who look dangerous. They are the ones who look safe. The reason Johan exists as a character and the reason Naoki Urasawa wrote him the way he did is to show us something deeply uncomfortable about human psychology. That emptiness, when taken to its absolute extreme, becomes more terrifying than any desire. A person who wants something can be reasoned with. A person who wants nothing cannot. Here's where it gets philosophically interesting. Because Makishima is the only villain on this list who makes you genuinely question whether he is wrong. In Psychopaths, society runs on the Sybil system, an eye that scans your brain and predicts whether you will commit a crime before you commit it. Your whole life, your job, your freedom, your future is determined by a number, a crime coefficient. Makishima's unique condition is that the Sybil system cannot read him. His crime coefficient stays clear no matter what he does. He could kill someone right in front of a scanner and walk away clean. Psychologically, this is not a disorder in the clinical sense, but what it represents is fascinating. Makishima has no external system of accountability. None. The thing that keeps society in check, the thing that theoretically keeps all of us in check, simply does not apply to him, and his response to this, not to hide it, not to exploit it for personal gain, but to use it as a philosophical experiment. Here is where the psychology becomes genuinely complex. Makishima genuinely believes he is liberating humanity. He believes the Sybil system has robbed people of their free will, of their capacity to make genuine choices, including the choice to be truly evil. In his worldview, a society that never faces real darkness never truly grows. Now, is he right? Partially. The Sybil system is corrupted. It is doing exactly what he says. But here is where his psychology breaks. He has a profound moral dysregulation, the ability to think brilliantly about ethics without being constrained by them. He can articulate exactly why murder is wrong and then commit it in the next breath without any cognitive dissonance whatsoever. That expression, not pleasure, not guilt, pure fascination. Real psychologists call this detached evaluation. The ability to observe extreme human suffering with the emotional register of someone watching an interesting documentary. And the most chilling thing about Makishima, he reads literature constantly, he quotes philosophers. He is genuinely intellectual, genuinely curious, genuinely searching for meaning. He is not empty like Johan, he is overflowing. He simply removed the part of himself that cares what his conclusions cost other people. Okay, we need to talk about Dio. Dio Brando grew up in poverty with an abusive, alcoholic father. From day one, the world showed him exactly one lesson: power is the only thing that matters. If you have it, you survive. If you do not, you suffer. This is the origin of his Asp Day. Not a random genetic lottery, but a learned survival response that got hardwired so deep it became his entire personality. Every single relationship Dio has ever had is transactional. His friendship with Jonathan, a resource to exploit, his followers, tools, his entire mission of world domination, an extension of a child who was once powerless, swearing he would never feel that way again. Now the intermittent explosive disorder Id. This is where Dio becomes unpredictable even to his own allies. Id is characterized by sudden, disproportionate explosions of rage in response to minor provocations. Remember, every single time something did not go Dio's way, the escalation is immediate, volcanic, and completely disproportionate. Jonathan refuses to break, burn the dog. Someone challenges his authority, immediate annihilation. There is no middle setting with Dio. It is 0 or 100 always. But here is the thing about Dio that nobody talks about enough. Underneath all of that, the cruelty, the dominance, the endless hunger for power, there is a deeply wounded child who watched his father drink himself to death and decided the world owed him everything it had taken. That does not excuse anything Dio did. Not even slightly. But it explains everything. And that is the whole point of this video. And now we arrive at the most interesting one. The one that broke the pattern entirely. Meruem. Meruem is the Chimera Ant King, born at the apex of power. Literally the most powerful being on Earth from the moment of his existence. He has never known weakness. He has never needed anyone. He has never experienced vulnerability. Psychologically, Meruem at the start of Hey X show's textbook Schizoid personality features. Schizoid personality disorder is characterized by emotional coldness, detachment from social relationships, and a profound indifference to the opinions, feelings, or existence of other people. Meruem does not hate humans, he does not resent them, he simply does not register them as relevant. They are below his consideration entirely. That emotional flatness, that complete absence of connection is the defining feature of schizoid presentation. And then, Komugi, a blind girl, fragile, unremarkable in every way except one, she is the world champion of Gungi, a game Meruem cannot beat. And something unprecedented happens. Meruem becomes curious, not about the game, about her, about why she exists, about what she feels, about what it means to be human and broken, and still the best in the world at something. What we witness across Meruem's arc is something psychologists call earned attachment, the ability of a person with extreme relational deficits to form a genuine connection when the right conditions are met. It is rare, it is fragile, and in Meruem's case it costs him everything. By the time he is poisoned, by the time he is dying, the one thing he asks for is not power, not survival, not victory. He asks for Komugi, and they die together, playing Gungi, two people, one the pinnacle of power, one completely powerless, equally important to each other at the end. There is no villain on this list whose arc hurts more than Meruem's, because unlike the others, Griffith, Johan, Makishima, Dio, Meruem actually changed. He found the one thing his psychology had locked him out of his entire existence, and the universe took it from him immediately. So here's the thing I want to leave you with. Griffith was a poor child who turned his survival instinct into a god complex. Johan was a child who had his sense of identity systematically destroyed and rebuilt into something hollow. Makishima grew up in a world that could not measure him and concluded the world's measurements were worthless. Dio watched poverty and abuse teach him that the only way to not be destroyed is to be the destroyer. And Meruem was born into power so absolute that human connection was never even offered as an option. None of this is a defense. The things these characters did are indefensible, but here is the question I want you to sit with. Because that is what great anime does. It is not just entertainment. It wraps real psychological truth inside fictional characters and makes you feel it in a way a textbook never could. You just spent 20 minutes inside the minds of 5 broken people. And maybe that makes it a little harder to look at broken people in the real world and call them simply evil. Evil is rarely born. It is almost always built. That is it for today. If this video made you see these characters differently, or made you uncomfortable in a way you cannot quite explain, drop a comment below. I read every single one. And tell me this, which villain on this list do you think had the most understandable psychology? Not the most justified. The most understandable. I have a feeling the comments are going to be interesting on this one.